It is estimated there will be 2 billion more people on the planet by mid-century. Growing enough food for this booming world population without serious environmental impacts is one of the greatest challenges to face humanity.
The same way that we have been through the green revolution in aquaculture, right now we're going through the blue revolution.
Consumer demand for seafood is on the rise as doctors tout its health benefits and developing nations can afford more costly sources of protein.
By the year 2030, we're going to have to produce an additional 30 million metric tons of seafood to feed the human population.
At the same time, wild fish stocks are either depleted, overfished, or stagnant at best.
If we're going to actually protect our oceans, we have to make that transition from hunting, gathering to farming. It's what we've done with all of our other food production.
To walk into a restaurant and order a steak of a wild cow, that doesn't exist anymore.
The reality is we are farming just about everything else that we're consuming, so why not fish?
We're already farming more than half the global seafood production. We're farming more seafood than we are beef globally, and it's only going to continue.
Because of their cold-blooded nature and the fact that they don't need to expend as much energy living in a buoyant environment, fish require a lot less feed than land animals, decreasing the demand on Earth's resources.
Aquaculture is the most efficient form of animal protein production.
Whether we like it or not, aquaculture has become mainstream. There's people who are still thinking negatively about aquaculture, but those are the dark ages.
Habitat destruction, water pollution, disease, and food safety scares caused mainly by crammed nearshore aquaculture operations in Asia have given the industry a bad name. But experts say newer, more innovative ways of farming the sea are the way of the future. One way to increase fish production in a sustainable way is to move aquaculture operations offshore, where there's plenty of available space and strong currents flush out the pens to avoid polluting sensitive ecosystems.
We're going to need to double the global seafood supply in order to meet projected demand. And we think the only way to really do that is to move farms into the open ocean, where we have this vast environment that can support that kind of growth.
In terms of a sustainable place to raise fish, the open ocean is fantastic.
These offshore submersible cages are marvelous pieces of underwater engineering. There is no doubt that those are the most advanced aquaculture systems in the world. It is the future of seafood production.
Without aquaculture, we're not going to have enough seafood to supply the world.
What does the seafood of the future look like? How do we sustainably grow fish from farm to fork?
Major funding for this program was provided by the Batchelor Foundation, encouraging people to preserve and protect America's underwater resources. And by Divers Direct, Emotion Sports, inspiring the pursuit of adventure and water sports. The Do Unto Others Trust. The William J. and Isabel G. Clark Foundation. And by the following: Lady Susanna P. Tweed and Carlton Tweed Charitable Foundation, Skip and Diane Day.
Farming sustainable seafood for the future is one of the goals at the University of Miami's experimental hatchery in South Florida.
I think what makes us competitive and in technology development is that there is science behind everything we do. We start with the research that we can then transfer to the private sector. There is nothing that we do that will not have a practical application.
One species the university developed for the Western commercial market is cobia. Long popular with sports fishermen across the southeastern United States, cobia is a fast-growing whitefish with a mild flavor.
It's a fantastic eating fish, very high in omega-3s. They grow very fast, so they'll reach 10 pounds in just about a year in the cages. Or when you look at grouper, it's almost 2 years to a couple of pounds. And sea bass, snapper, they're taking a year and a half to get to 1.5 pounds.
Together with private partners, the university began development of cobia farming in 2000. Demonstration projects in Puerto Rico and the Bahamas allowed them to test their concepts and work out optimal conditions and procedures to develop the species for market.
We've come across challenges and had to continuously overcome those challenges, and we're at a point now where we have what we think is a great platform, and we're focused on kind of those incremental improvements to make it more efficient going forward. I'm the third generation of my family in the seafood business. As far back as I can remember, my father, my grandfather, they would talk about fish farming as the future, and not just any farming, but farming responsibly in the ocean.
Brian O'Hanlon is founder of Open Blue. After working in close cooperation with the University of Miami on the development of the process, his company is now commercially farming cobia off the coast of Panama.
We're the largest cobia producer in the world at the moment.
It all begins with the proper breeding fish, known as broodstock, which scientists at the university catch with the help of Florida fishermen.
So this is one of our 3 cobia broodstock tanks. And basically what we did is we genotyped all the fish here and individually tagged them. So we know each fish. We figured out the best way to combine these fish to get the most genetic diversity out of the group of fish we have here. So these cobia broodstock can give us anywhere from 1 million to 3 million eggs in a single spawn. We're cycling our fish on and off. So what that means is the main cue for spawning is temperature with this species. So we can heat up and chill down the water to start and stop them spawning. We maintain 3 different breeding groups of cobia right now, and we will cycle sort of 1 group off, 2 groups on, and then just keep cycling through the year so that we can provide a constant year-round supply of eggs. When they spawn, the fertilized eggs will float to the surface, so we can skim the tank surface into this little side tank for egg collection. So it makes it very easy for us. Generally, these fish spawn around dusk or in the middle of the night, and then in the mornings we can come here and we'll have our eggs collected in this tank.
Within a few hours of spawning, the fertilized eggs are packaged up and shipped to Open Blue's facility in Panama, where they supplement the egg supply raised locally.
And we typically have a 24 to 36 hour window from the time the egg is fertilized until the time the egg hatches. We bring them to our hatchery, put them in our incubator, and within about 12 to 24 hours, depending on timing of when we receive them, they'll begin hatching, and then we'll have larvae swimming in the water column.
The newly hatched larvae will feed off their yolk sac for 3 to 4 days.
Right around day 3, we begin introducing what's called a rotifer. And the rotifer is basically small plankton that we've been able to cultivate in our facilities. Essentially, the rotifer has no nutritional value, but whatever we feed to the rotifer is what we're trying to get into the fish. That's the nutritional value. It's called our enrichment. So the fish will feed on the rotifer from roughly day 3 till around day 8, and then we'll begin introducing artemia, which is basically a brine shrimp. We'll do the same thing where we enrich the artemia with all of the vitamins, minerals, essential oils that we want the fish to eat. And that'll continue till around day 18. These are all days post-hatch where we begin introducing dry feed and weaning the fish off of artemia. From that point forward, they're ready to consume a dried, pelleted diet for the remainder of their growth. So the fish will stay inside the hatchery till roughly day 30 when they reach about 1 gram. After the fish reach a gram, then they're moved out to our nursery, which is still on land, but it's outdoors. The fish will stay there for roughly another 50 to 60 days until they reach 150 grams. And at that point, the fish is strong enough. We've got a good control and inventory. We can count them, we can grade them, and they're large enough to vaccinate before we actually move the fish out to sea. We've learned in this particular environment here off the coast of Panama what they're most susceptible to, various types of bacteria as an example, and we're able to vaccinate the fish against those bacteria so that we can basically provide healthier life for the fish.
In the past, some aquaculture operations, especially in Asia, have come under fire for heavy use of antibiotics.
Our practice is to only use medication when it's absolutely essential for the health of the fish. It's our view that we can farm fish with very minimal use of antibiotics in the future.
There are pumps to gently move the fish from one location to another.
To move the fish from the nursery out to the farm, we have these large transport tanks, essentially, that get hoisted onto a boat with a crane. That boat goes out to the farm, and then the fish get gently transferred down into the pen. So it all happens within roughly a 6 to 8 hour window. The fish will move from the tanks on shore to the pens offshore. Our farm is extremely unique in the fact that it's 8 miles out in the ocean and it's a fully exposed environment. So we don't have any shelter. And half the year we see seas averaging 3 to 4 meters, which is pretty significant. It's very deep, very strong currents, so it's a very high energy environment.
This high energy environment disperses any fish waste into the open ocean, ensuring that the fish swim in clean water and the surrounding ecosystem isn't harmed by the output of nutrients.
Our belief is by moving offshore, we get away from a lot of the conflicting uses that you find in coastal waters, such as recreational use, conservational use, navigation and fishing. We also get away from sensitive ecosystems, so we're putting the farm out into an environment that can support the farm and support the biomass without seeing negative impact to the surrounding ecosystem. And we just generally get the fish into cleaner water. They're always swimming in good currents. It results in very fit, strong, healthy fish.
The pens, or cages that hold the fish, are highly engineered steel structures surrounded by a hardened plastic netting that can withstand predators, such as sharks.
They're 7 stories tall and a third of a football field wide. They hold 6,400 cubic meters of water, and they weigh over 20 tons dry.
The approximately 20 pens are attached to the sea floor more than 200 feet below by an underwater mooring grid that holds them in place.
So the grid is basically a large network of ropes and shackles and chains and anchors connected together to create almost like parking lots for the pens. And on that grid is where we run cables and hoses and everything to feed and connect into each pen. So we can put a pen in, we can take a pen out, and the grid will stay in position. So a single grid has about 4.5 miles of rope and chain and about 40 anchors the size of a small vehicle on the seabed anchoring it to the seafloor. We currently have 2 separate grids that can hold roughly 10 pens per grid, and we space them out so that we have typically younger fish on one grid, older fish on another grid, and we're always kind of rotating our crops through those grids.
The pens are roughly 330 feet apart from each other and aligned perpendicular to the current, so that all pens are receiving a constant flow of fresh, clean water without being exposed to fish waste from another cage. Usually, the pens are submerged, with their tops being 30 feet below the surface, but they can be raised and lowered to allow divers to enter the cage for maintenance or for fish to be harvested. The fish are fed daily by a feed boat that connects to a large hose that runs down into the pens.
On board the feed boat, they have silos and mixers. So the silos distribute the feed to the mixers mix dry feed and water and then pump the feed down through the hose into the pen, into these giant spirals that distribute the feed to the fish. And then down at the bottom of the pen, we have a camera looking up so that the operator on the boat that's controlling the feeding can regulate the amount of feed going in based on what he's seeing with the camera and how the fish are responding to the feed. We have a lot of hungry mouths to feed, and we want to make sure that that feed's well distributed, so we've developed these large distributors that work underwater to actually get the feed spread over roughly a 15-meter wide radius so that all of the fish in the pen all have an opportunity to eat equally.
One of the biggest challenges to raising carnivorous fish like cobia sustainably is devising a feed that doesn't put too much pressure on natural ecosystems. Cobia, like salmon and other farmed fish that are higher up in the food chain, are fed a pelleted diet that includes fish meal and fish oil derived from small, wild-caught fish such as anchovies.
That has been one of the major problems facing the development of aquaculture in the United States. We've been facing a lot of criticism, but the evidence shows clearly that raising carnivorous fish is much more efficient than leaving them out there in the wild to be caught, and it's more efficient than any other form of animal protein production.
While it's true that farmed fish require less land mass and fresh water, and are a lot more efficient at converting feed than beef, pork, or poultry, experts know that they have to reduce the amount of fish meal and fish oil used to make farming more sustainable and economically viable. The Monterey Bay Aquarium's Seafood Watch program rates fisheries and aquaculture businesses based on their sustainability. The program evaluates operations based on 10 different criteria. And while OpenBlue received best or good rankings in 9 of the categories in 2015, it was listed as a source of fish to avoid overall because of its feed.
Now in 2017, we're on track to go through an Aquaculture Stewardship Council audit and certification, and to shift our ranking with Monterey Bay. We totally support the high standards that they aim to achieve, and we're striving for that. From crop to crop, we see a downward trend in the amount of feed it takes to produce 1 pound of fish. And there's a number of reasons why we're driving that improvement. Everything from our diet development to stocking generally healthier fish, bigger fish, vaccinated fish. There's all these incremental improvements that are being put in place that help bring the feed efficiency in line. I would say right now, our feed efficiency is over 2 to 1. So it takes more than 2 pounds of feed to produce 1 pound of fish. But we are on track in the coming years, and we have a roadmap in place to bring that below 2 to 1.
The challenge is to formulate diets that make the use of fish meal and fish oil more efficient as the industry grows, while still providing the nutrients necessary for the fish to thrive and to deliver the desired health benefits to the consumer.
Our focus has been on, number one, ensuring that the product that we're selling to the consumer is healthy. And so we want to make sure that our fish is free from contaminants, but also that the fish is very high in heart-healthy omega-3. So that drive has been pushing a lot of our decision-making around what ingredients we put in the feed, and it's first and foremost in our decision-making process. OpenBlue cobia has one of the highest omega-3 contents of any fish on the market today. Just a single 8-ounce portion gives you enough omega-3 for your recommended dose for an entire week.
What keeps driving our research agenda are the needs of the industry. So we felt the need to focus on nutrition, on feeds, because that's 60 to 70% of the cost. And that is where the buck stops, so to speak. That's where the money is, and that's where the ecological efficiency isn't. And we're making a lot of progress to make things better.
Experts at the University of Miami are looking at substituting some of the fish meal and fish oil with ingredients derived from soy or algae.
We have a very strong nutrition program. We have to formulate a diet, test it in the fish at different levels, and then we look at the digestibility of that particular ingredient, because how good it is to be feeding the fish with an ingredient that is not digestible by the fish, that is all excreted. Most carnivorous fish, they lack the enzymes to break down plant proteins, so they could only do it at a certain level. So we have to test the digestibility. Once we get that down, we can then incorporate that particular ingredient in the formulation of that diet. It is complex. It is challenging because, again, in the end of the day, we all want to formulate a diet that is ecologically efficient, environmentally sustainable, and economically viable.
This is particularly important since the existing supply of fish meal and fish oil, despite having come from stable fisheries over the last several decades, cannot support the growing demand for farmed seafood moving forward. Alternative feeds that can be produced affordably and at a large scale will be key to meet the future demand for feed. Out at Open Blue's sea farm, up to 30,000 fish spend about 8 months in a pen before they're harvested.
To harvest the fish, we have a large funnel-shaped net, and we'll crowd the fish in that net by raising the pen, and it gently moves the fish down to the bottom of that net. And then we have a live fish transfer pump that's designed to move those fish then from the bottom of that net onto the boat, where every fish is individually stunned, and then each fish is bled. And what that does, that process of stunning and then bleeding, helps eliminate stress and preserve the quality of the flesh. So we extend shelf life, we just have a much cleaner, fresher tasting fish. Immediately after that, the fish go into a seawater ice slurry. It's very soft and gentle on the fish. It's circulating and it's at a very cold temperature, so it basically removes the heat from the fish very quickly. And the core of the fish is chilled to optimal temperatures in just a matter of hours.
Once back at the dock, the fish are trucked to the processing plant in Panama City.
In order to maintain maximum quality control, we truck our own fish back to our processing plant. And the fish are brought to the plant, and the plant will begin cleaning the fish, packing the fish, and at least whole fish, head on or head off gutted fish, will be ready to ship out the same day they arrive in the plant. We do other products where we'll do fillets or we'll freeze fish, and those fish might spend 1 or 2 days more in the plant before they're shipped out to the customers. Right now, almost all the fish we sell is fresh. We're only doing limited frozen products for certain customers. One of the huge advantages our fish has is its incredible shelf life. So it stays fresh and safe to eat for 21 days out of the water.
So here we have some fish packed for a local customer here in Panama. Every box is individually labeled. We have customer information, box information, weight of the box, number of fish in the box, the size of the fish in the box, their product form, quality, and then lot number. The lot number is really important because it allows us to trace the fish back to the hatchery and to the broodstock. So we pretty much know the life history of the fish and everything that's gone into that fish, from the time it hatched from an egg until the time it reaches our customer.
Generally, with our food supply, we've just been kind of out of sight, out of mind, and we just go to the retail store and buy what they've got, or we go to the restaurant and order what's on the menu without really knowing where it came from or how it was raised. I think technology these days makes it easier to create that link and to help people connect with the food that they're consuming and know how the fish or animal was raised from a kind of humane perspective, the quality of environment it was raised in, the impact it has to that environment, and just everything about it. And being able to bring that information forward to consumers, I think, is important. And it's something that we've been working hard on. Roughly 80% of our fish end up in North America, 15% in Europe, and the rest either Latin America or some Asian countries. And then I'd say approximately our split is roughly 70-30, 70% going into food service and restaurants and 30% going into retail.
Some of the fish return to their birthplace, Miami, where local chefs have incorporated them into their menus.
Well, I love cobia as a fish. I mean, it's such a versatile fish. You can cook it, you can do raw, sushi, sashimi. So, and I've used cobia over the years, wild cobia, but it's inconsistent. Sometimes it's available, sometimes it's not. And then I was introduced to Open Blue, which is a farm-raised product that's very consistent, high quality. It was a no-brainer.
I'm looking to get a golden crisp on there. I first learned about Open Blue cobia through actually my fish purveyor that I buy from. I knew about cobia for a long time. I had my captain's license when I first moved to Miami, and I fished all the time. Cobia was one of the fish that I fished for. And so I knew about the fish, I knew about the taste of the fish, and actually when I think back to then to now, this particular fish, this Open Blue cobia, it's a superior flavor to what the one was that I had years ago. It took well to just about any application or cooking style I wanted to do with it. And it became one of my most popular fishes that I used.
OpenBlue's operation in Panama is one example of offshore aquaculture that's developed through innovative collaboration between academia and the private sector. With 9 billion people expected to live on planet Earth by mid-century, humankind has to develop sustainable new methods to feed the world, including groundbreaking techniques to farm the seafood of the future.
Major funding for this program was provided by the Batchelor Foundation, encouraging people to preserve and protect America's underwater resources. And by Divers Direct, Emotion Sports, inspiring the pursuit of adventure and water sports. The Do Unto Others Trust. The William J. and Isabel G. Clark Foundation. And by the following: Lady Susanna P. Tweed and Carlton Tweed Charitable Foundation, Skip and Diane Day.